Hey guys, Xenite here. Sorry I haven't heard too much from you lately. About 4 days ago, I was eating some popcorn my wife made, and managed to bite into a piece of popcorn that had an unpopped kernel in it, right on my wisdom tooth, and damaged my wisdom tooth. So I haven't been able to talk or do too much for the last about 4 or 5 days with a swollen jaw. But I did get into the Elder Scrolls Online beta, and I wanted to give you my first impressions on it. They just had a 3-day beta event this weekend. It was a little hard to actually get in to play. On the first day, the servers were really unstable. Most people couldn't get in, or if they did get in, they was immediately being kicked right back out. But I finally did get in, got a little playtime in, so I thought I'd let you know my first impressions on that. Unfortunately, there won't be any video or photos. Part of the terms of service of the beta is that you cannot show any photos or videos or photos from the beta itself. You may know that there was a little bit of a kind of a faux scandal that happened, I think it was about a month or two ago, where somebody had posted some really intentionally crappy video of the beta on YouTube. It caused a lot of conflict. So they've kind of really cracked down on that. In fact, when you play the beta now, there is a watermark of your email address all over the screen. So you can't even post anything now without them knowing automatically the email address of the account associated with the beta. And that's fine. I'm sorry I can't show that to you guys, but maybe once the beta opens up a little bit more and they allow it, I'll cover it a lot more. So the game starts out, as you may have heard, in the Daedric dimension called Coldharbour. And like most Elder Scroll games, your character starts out as a prisoner. It's kind of like this faceless, nameless prisoner that's kind of classic if you're used to Oblivion or Skyrim. It's kind of a tradition in Elder Scrolls. And the tutorial was set out pretty well. I'll get right into kind of some of the things I noticed, though. The first thing I do, and most people do when they go into a new game on the PC, is they go in and mess around with the graphic settings, find what they like, set up the controls and everything. So I thought I'd talk about that first. The one thing I wanted to say about the graphics of the game is that I would call it comparable to the 360's version of Skyrim, graphics-wise. And I was actually a little disappointed by the fidelity of the graphics in the game. It could look so much better on the PC. It should look so much better on the PC. But as you may know, they are developing this game for the newer consoles as well. And unfortunately, it feels like they are developing the graphics for the lowest common denominator, which is the new consoles, instead of taking advantage of what the PC can do. So graphics-wise, I have to admit I'm a little disappointed. I had hoped the game would look a little better. It's not awful. It's not awful. Don't get me wrong. It's a decent-looking game, but I'm really hoping that they give PC users more power options in the future to kind of make the game look a little bit better. As far as the user interface and controls go, all the controls are reconfigurable, which is fantastic as a left-handed gamer. So that's already in there and fully functional. The chat box interface I felt was actually very rustic looking, and it kind of just felt really outdated for an MMO coming out for this time period. The first thing I did after doing all that and getting my controls set up, one second, my cat decided she wanted to check out my blue microphone here. So the first thing I did was I went from third-person mode right into first-person mode. And as you may have known, the game didn't originally include first-person mode, and there was kind of a lot of outrage about that because Elder Scroll fans are used to first-person mode. A lot of us play in first-person mode. That's how I played Oblivion, that's how I played Skyrim, that's how I played Morrowind. So they did incorporate that into the game, so I was very curious to see how that worked functionally. And it was actually pretty damn good. I think they have a little bit of work to do on some of the animations and the look of the hands and the weapons, but for the most part it's very good looking. It actually feels like you're playing a traditional single-player Elder Scrolls game when you're in that mode. It felt like I was back in Skyrim, except obviously different parts of Skyrim that we hadn't seen before, but It felt like I was back in Skyrim, and when you play in that mode, the game looks just like an Elder Scroll game that we've come to know and love. And I was actually kind of shocked because I figured, well, I might try it out, but I probably am not going to stay into it. But I actually played the entire length of my beta testing in that mode, which really surprised me because I never thought I would play an MMO in first-person mode. I figured it was just you kind of want the perspective of being drawn out from your character a little bit more to see your surroundings a little bit better. But I actually got really used to it very quickly, and I think that's how I'm going to be playing the game from here on out, which is kind of exciting. One other thing I noticed right away is, and you may have probably already heard this, is that the game and the NPCs and the quest are fully voiced. And I would say it's probably maybe a small step below the quality of the Old Republic. One of the problems that I did encounter with the NPC speech when you talk to them is I've noticed that the dialogue itself it's fairly solid, but the NPCs on the screen when they're speaking, the dialogue is often out of sync with their mouse. It's not synced up very well. In fact, when they move their mouse when they're talking, it looks more like they're like open mouth chewing like corn or something. It's not done really well. But the dialogue itself is pretty good. There is one other problem with the dialogue right now is that I've noticed, in fact, it's just a lot of it's missing. And it's kind of really jarring right now because when you speak to an NPC, sometimes you're talking to them and you click on one of the options and they go from their regular voice to this kind of placeholder voice, which is, it's like this weird synthesized, like Microsoft Bob voice. And I'm assuming that's just a temporary placeholder. I can almost be sure that that's going to be replaced. It's just for whatever reason the audio files weren't ready at that time, or they haven't been put in yet. But that is kind of a little weird thing that you'll experience right now. As far as the questing in the game goes, I like the questing that it feels like more substantial jobs. When you get sent out to do the questing, it's not like, okay, go kill 4 mud crabs and bring these shells back. There may be quests like that in the game that I just haven't experienced yet, but the questing that I did experience was more, I'll give you an example of an early quest. You are on a boat, and you wake up on a boat, and it's the captain of the boat who had saved you. And she sends you to go out because she wants to pull off this job, this heist job, and she needs some additional crew members. So she sends you out to go find these crew members, and one of the first ones you go to find is another former boat captain, and her crew's been taken hostage, and they're holding in this other pirate compound, and you have to find them, and you give them disguises, and you set them free. So it feels more substantial. It feels like I'm actually going out and doing a job, and not just going out and collecting like pieces of an animal's leg or its spleen or something. So I actually like that. One of the problems I do have with the questing right now in the game is that it feels like they haven't refined the kind of hubs for questing as much. For example, in World of Warcraft, when you do quest, they've really refined it to where it leads you from one place to the next, and you have clear direction as to where to go to find the quests. And in the beta, I've noticed when you get near an NPC that has a quest, you'll get this arrow with kind of an outline around it up on your map, on your directional compass. And that's all fine and good, but it doesn't really tell me where to go to find those NPCs unless I just happen to pass within a certain distance of them and see that marker. So I think they need to do a better job of leading kind of characters, pointing them in the right direction to find those quests. Because the ones I did find and I did experience were actually very good, and they were satisfying quests. I just want to make sure people aren't missing out on that content because they just don't happen to stumble across those NPC quest givers. Another thing I experienced, at least in the starting area of the beta, I didn't get too far past that, is that I wasn't too overly thrilled with how they laid out the town, the first town you get into. And this is for the Daggerfall, I believe it's the Daggerfall Covenant. I rolled a Breton. and it just felt like the town was completely spread out way too far apart. There was no real clear indications of where to find stuff, where to find certain vendors. It felt a little poorly designed, I'm sorry to say. But overall, I think the game has a huge amount of potential. I love the fact that it's a fully voiced MMO. It's one of the reasons why I really like the Old Republic. It's one of the reasons my wife really likes the Old Republic. I'm hoping they can tighten that up a little bit, maybe improve the syncing of the models for the NPCs, and as soon as they get in all the dialogue that's missing. But I think in the end, it's going to be a very cool feature of the game. There's only a couple of MMOs out there. In fact, the only two I can think of is this one and the Old Republic. Guild Wars 2 does have a lot of voiced over on their quests for your main storyline, but outside of that, not really. But like I said, the game right now, it has its issues. I thought it was going to be a little farther along than it was. Right now, they're supposed to be releasing this in 2014. You know, I'm sure they have a clear plan to get to that date, but right now it seems like I would have guessed it as maybe 2015. It really seems like it needs that much work, to be honest. I thought they was going to be a little bit further done. But we'll see. I haven't experienced the other areas yet. I don't know how complete those areas are. I may have been in one of the areas that haven't been given as much love, maybe. Unfortunately, like I said, I wasn't able to get in almost on the first day of the beta, so I only had about a day and a half to actually play the game and experience it. What I said, though, earlier is it does feel like an Elder Scrolls game. And I think it has a lot of potential, and I think it has a lot of work to go yet, but I think it could be a very solid MMO. And I think it could appeal to even people who maybe not typically want to play an MMO. Because even though it's an MMO, you're still getting that almost single-player Elder Scroll experience with a lot of voice quest dialogue and a lot of exploration and dungeons. And I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to the next beta session. I'm not sure when it's going to be. But my early opinions of is basically that it still has a long way to go, but it's actually looking very promising. One other thing I can talk about real quick is I guess the actual gameplay interface. One thing I'm trying to get used to is you have an action bar in the game, and it's not a clickable action bar. You basically have to use hotkeys for your skills. And the problem with that is that being a left-handed gamer, I'm basically using the number pad keys for my hotkeys to use my skills. Now, if I had something like a Razer Naga MMO mouse, I could map all those to the mouse and it wouldn't be an issue. Right now, though, I'm using a Death Adder. I'm actually using the left-handed version. And they just did come out with the left-handed version of the Razer Naga for this year, and I'm actually looking forward to getting that in the future, and that should solve the problem for me. But right now it does feel a little awkward, and I think anybody who's used to playing like a WoW style or even a Guild Wars where you actually have a clickable action bar to activate your skills, that may be a little off-putting at first. And in fact, you know, like my wife, she's excited about the game because she you know, she's a fan of Elder Scrolls. She spent a lot of time in Skyrim after I introduced it to her, but I think that's going to be something that's hard for her to overcome personally. So I'm hoping maybe in the future they find a way to make that a little more accessible and easier to use, but we'll see. But like I said, the game's very promising. I'm looking forward to the next beta session, and after I get to spend some more time with the game, I'll make another video and let you guys know a little bit more in depth what I think about the game and some of the systems in the game. I still have to try the PvP, see how that goes. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'll let you guys know in the future.